You are listening to Larry Conners, USA.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Conners USA. Larry Conners USA.
I woke up this morning, got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
The knee on the neck of justice for black Americans. Profound fear and trauma. The pain, the exhaustion that black and brown Americans experience every single day. The murder of George Floyd launched a summer of protest we hadn't seen since the civil rights era in the 60s. Protests that unified people of every race and generation in peace and with purpose to say enough, enough, enough of this senseless killings.
Those are the words of President Biden yesterday following the verdict that found Derek Chauvin guilty on all charges. As you know, that happened about 40 minutes, maybe an hour plus after we were off the air yesterday. We knew it was coming. We told you it was coming. And there was President Biden yesterday saying enough, that now we have justice. Now, there's a lot of pushback in various areas. We're going to spend a lot of time today going through a lot of this for you. So Biden made those remarks after the verdict, and he's certainly entitled to say whatever he wants, especially after the verdict. But he had made some remarks prior to the verdict, which some took exception with when he began to talk about he was praying for the right verdict, the right verdict. Now, what's a right verdict? Well, for Derek Chauvin, the right verdict was innocent on all charges. The right verdict for those who wanted him prosecuted was guilty on all charges. And, in fact, that's what they ended up getting. So what we really wanted was the just verdict. Chauvin would probably say, we did not get it. Others are saying we did, and yet it's not enough, and yet it's not enough. Do you agree with this verdict? Would you agree if it had been totally innocent? Was the verdict, and this is a key point, was the verdict reached on facts? Facts only, nothing else. Of course, we're going to have appeals coming. And we already knew in advance of the verdict being delivered that the remarks by Congressman Waters and even the remarks made by President Biden prior to the verdict coming down might be in play. President Biden's remarks made prior to the verdict less likely, as he talked about. He said it's a horrible crime, but I'm only saying this after they are now in deliberations. In other words, they can't hear me. Waters' remarks were made Sunday night. The jury was never sequestered. Why? That's a big question. Of course, the other part is, why was it held in the region? Why was it not moved to another area of less sensitivity? That's what normally happens in high-profile crimes. Well, that takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of money all the way around. But I'm sure the prosecutor wanted to make sure it's held right there so he could oversee it. But the appeals coming, will the remarks in particular about Waters and saying we're not going to be satisfied with anything but murder verdict and guilty, guilty, guilty on all charges, and we're going to stay in the streets if it doesn't happen, did that influence the jury in any way? Well, we don't know if they had access or not. We're told they don't think so. The judge said, I asked them not to, so he's relying on the juries. To my knowledge yesterday, the defense did not poll them after that verdict to ask, did you see or read anything since you started deliberations or in the last closing days? Anything. So we're going to get into that. Jonathan Turley, George Washington University law professor. And then if you did think that the guilty verdict would end protest, the rioting in the streets, no. In Portland last night, arson, attacking police, all in the name of Derek Chauvin, guilty verdict, and, of course, on behalf of George Floyd. I'm going to share many of the thoughts representing the black community today from often spokesmen for the black community, the short-term and long-term effects of the conviction of Derek Chauvin. Sentencing is scheduled in a couple of months, 40 years max, apparently. What happens if the mob doesn't like that sentence? If the verdict is overturned, what happens? And what happens on a daily basis between police officers, regardless of their color, and minority community? Every shooting involves a police officer with a suspect is going to be always questioned. And the facts are more whites have been killed by black police officers than blacks, but that's not in play for many right now. Also, Edie Highpool is going to join us, Center for Renewing America. The government caught buying a human flesh from aborted babies that could have been preemies. And Jonathan Daniel Davidson of the Federalist, are you a rube, ignorant because you won't get the vaccine? Lock and load, ready on the right.
You can email Larry at LarryConnersUSA@gmail.com. LarryConnersUSA@gmail.com.